Hello, welcome back to our new series. New. If I had an effects thing, it would be like new all over the screen. But I don't, so it's just me doing that, which is just as exciting. Uh, this week, like I said, we're going to be talking about new eyes. But to start, I want to talk about movies. I love watching movies, and one of my favorite kinds of movies to watch is like a movie that has this crazy twist at the end. But it has to be a good twist. And what I mean by good twist is when the twist happens, it makes you like rethink the entire movie up until that point. Does that make sense? So, for instance, well, I'm not gonna spoil any movies because I don't know who has or hasn't watched what. So I'll speak generally. Like, let's say there was a movie that had a twist where a character wasn't who you thought they were, right? And so then you're like, what? And then it makes you think, wait, what about all those? Oh, oh. And so then the whole rest of the movie, it's like different now because of this new information that you have. And so what's cool about it is that you go back and you watch the movie a second time. And even though you're like seeing the same things in the movie with new information, with new eyes, it's like a totally different movie again because you're like, oh, that was a clue that I didn't notice. That was something I didn't notice. That means more than one thing when he said that thing, right? And it's really cool and enjoyable. And that's why I love it because you like go back again with a fresh interpretation of what's happening. And so I kind of want to talk about that, but in real life, right? How does that happen in the world? And so the person I want to talk about today in the Bible is Paul or Saul, because he starts off as Saul, right? And I'm not going to read the whole passage just because it's kind of long, and sitting here watching a video of me reading can't not be the most exciting thing, but I'll do my best to like explain it and paraphrase it. So it takes place in Acts chapter 9. So if you do want to read it, all of this story is in Acts chapter 9. And so we have this guy, Saul, who's a Pharisee or a Jewish religious leader who hates Christians because he feels like they're undermining the whole system that he's been a part of. And it says, like, while Saul was still mumbling his murderous threats, right? Because Saul was all about killing them Christians, right? While that was happening, he says there's like this big flash of light. Saul falls to the ground and he hears the voice of Jesus. And Jesus says, Saul, why are you persecuting my disciples, my followers? And it says that even the people around Saul hear the voice but cannot see like where the voice is coming from. And I think that part's in there, so it's like we know that this isn't just happening inside Saul's head. And at the same time, there's a disciple who gets a message from God saying, you know, that guy Saul who's like trying to kill everyone, I actually need you to go meet him on this road to Damascus. And the disciple must have been like, what? Like, why would I want to go meet the guy who is killing everyone like me? But he's obedient. He goes, and you know what he finds? When Saul like gets up off the ground and opens his eyes, he cannot see. He's blinded. And I'm sure he felt very humbled and disoriented and confused, right? It's very humbling to suddenly be in a position where you need help, right? Because Saul couldn't get anywhere, couldn't do anything. And in that moment of humility, here comes this Christian disciple who's like, let me help you, right? Let me help you. Like, God has a plan for you. He doesn't want you to be doing what you've been doing. And I was sent here to let you know that and to assist you. And then it says that something like scales fell from Saul's eyes and he could see again. And like from that moment on, Saul's entire life turns around, right? He's a completely different person. He's doing a new thing. And he's had this experience, this new information that actually maybe Christians, their goal is not just to like grab power and undermine the Jewish religion, but maybe they had an encounter, an experience with the living God, right? With Jesus. And Paul has now had a similar encounter with Jesus. And he was humbled. And then he must have been humbled even further, right? Because instead of his friends coming to help him, this guy who should be scared of him, who he is supposed to hate, comes to help him. And so he has all this new information, and he must be seeing the world and everything he thought he knew in a completely different way. The people who he thought were his enemies are now his closest friends. The people who he thought were his friends are now his enemies, right? Everything has flip flopped, and he's seeing things with new eyes. So, what does this mean for you? How do we have new eyes? Well, it's a new year. We've said goodbye last week to the old habits, to the old mindsets, old attitudes, old behaviors, whatever it was. You've said goodbye to those things. And now let's see things with new eyes, right? And I know, so like for instance, I know a lot of you have been trying desperately to readjust your sleep schedule again, right? So what would and I think you're already seeing things with new eyes, right? Because when I was a high schooler or a junior higher, and I thought about the idea of like staying up till 3 in the morning, in my head, I'm like, that's awesome. That's so much freedom. You just get to like be up all night doing whatever you want. And then, it's just fun because no one's there to bother you, right? But then the reality of that is that then you don't wake up until a certain time, and then you're missing like the rest of the world because no one else is on that schedule. Like it's not what it was made out to be in your head. And so we're seeing it with new eyes that actually having a disciplined sleep schedule is not a burden but a blessing. So that's like one example of seeing something with new eyes. And maybe you have people in your life similar to Saul who you're like, these people are the worst. They either bug me or they annoy me or they're too uptight, XYZ, whatever it is, right? What would it look like to see those people with new eyes? Who might they be for you? And that doesn't mean they're going to be your best friend, but maybe there's someone who teaches you patience. Maybe there's someone who teaches you how to love someone who believes differently than you. Maybe there's someone who knows, like it's your new eyes and it's your role to see the world differently, right? To see the world differently. How will you see the world in 2021? Will you see obstacles in your life as things that make you give up, or as things to strengthen you, things to overcome, things to press on through, right? How are you going to see the world in this new year with new eyes, right? Because it's the same stuff in front of us we've already seen in 2021. Like the problems don't just go away because a number changed. It's the same stuff in front of us, but how are we going to choose to see it with new eyes? How will we choose to see it with new eyes? Because I think before, then this will be next week, new behaviors, new habits, new life can arrive. We need to see things differently first, right? And we see that in Saul. Before Saul turned into Paul and he like changed his whole behavior and his whole life around, he saw things differently first. The old way of seeing was gone, and then the scales fell from his eyes and he saw things differently. So how will you see things differently? So that's it. Next week is our last week of our new series, and then our new series becomes an old series because we'll do a new series. Hope you followed that. Hope you're doing well. I'll talk with you later. Adios.